What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. Welcome back to another preview video for the Six Nations 2022. This is, of course, where we chuck on a game of Rugby 22 in the background of the teams that are going to be playing this weekend. And then over the top, we talk about the official teams that have been announced that are going to be playing in this game. We have a run through all the players who we think might do well, who we think might do badly, go over some of the team changes for the week, and finally we give a score prediction on how we think the game's going to go. England versus Ireland is set to be a very, very big game, very pivotal in terms of the Six Nations outcome. So let's get this game kicked off and underway. Alrighty, P. Barnes is going to get us kicked off. Not that this is a real player. England, of course, not licensed in Rugby 22, which is a bit of a shame, but at least they're playing in a white kit now. So Ireland versus England, or England versus Ireland, I should say. It's that way around. This is a big game every year, one that I think both sides enjoy. One, as a neutral watcher, I get to really enjoy because it ends up being very, very different games every single year. Normally, because of the switch-ups some of the teams have, England have always been a little bit more of an aggressive attacking team. Ireland have become very good in recent years in terms of the defence and breakdown situations. So they've got very friendly counters to each other, and it's an awful lot of fun to watch. And this one is set to be quite a big one. Both these teams now going to be fighting it out to try and recover the Six Nations. France on a bit of a storming lead, so they're both needing a win from this game. And realistically, if either team loses this game, you have to believe they're sort of going to be looking at their not going to be winning the Six Nations this year. So a lot of pressure on both teams to perform. Who should we talk about this to start off with? Let's start off with Ireland. Let's start off talking about Ireland. Ireland last week had a very weird game against Italy. I think it's fair to say Italy lost their hooker very early on in the game due to an injury, and then lost their second hooker to a red card. A red card I did feel was a little bit harsh. I know we see yellow cards and red cards for those things, but it did mean that the game changed an awful lot. We got to see uncontested scrums, we got to see a 13-man Italy team playing for a large majority of the game, and it did impact on the game. Although you think 13 men is going to be a real hindrance to a team because of the amount of space that opens up, it does also mean that Ireland weren't able to utilise one of their biggest strengths, being that scrummaging, in order to try and gain penalties, to try and tire the Italian forwards out. And overall, the Italians defended really well, and although Ireland came away with a very large score point win over Italy, it doesn't necessarily mean they got to learn a lot from that game. They didn't really get to test their scrummaging skills a lot. They didn't get to test all the different set plays. There was so much space opening up. We saw plenty of times in that game Ireland players almost like running into each other. They weren't even sure what to do. Passes that would definitely be given in a normal game were instead held onto, and the player tried to run through themselves because they found a bit of a gap that wouldn't normally be there. So it did actually begin to mess up a little bit for Ireland. I was slightly disappointed in the final result for Ireland. I thought they could have actually done better, and I think they'll be wanting to really try and review that game as a bit of nothing and try and focus a bit more on their loss to France more than anything coming into this game to try and improve. So let's talk about the team that's going to be announced to be playing in this game. Starting off in this front row, we've got HEALY coming in on the loose head, which is nice to see. SHEEHAN in that hooker position, and FURLONG in that tight head. Now this is a powerful front row. There's some experienced lads in here. There's certainly a lot of weight here in this front row. They're going to be looking for scrum dominance from the off. It's what it's looking like to me here. We know England love their big scrummaging, their big set pieces, their line-outs, their scrums, their mauls. I don't think it's a bad move to chuck the heavy boys on straight from the off just to try and limit how much damage England can do. We know England like to try and score early on in a game, and if you can stop them from scoring early on, you can sometimes put them on the back foot, especially with the discipline that Ireland normally have. Not so much in the France game, but normally Ireland have pretty good discipline. That reduces your penalty count, and if you can then remove the set pieces from England, I don't think that's a terrible move. In terms of the lock departments, Tadhg, BEIRNE and James Ryan coming back in the side now on that number 5 shirt. So again, this is a big couple of players here in terms of the lock department. In terms of the line out, again, this to me is a set piece counter setup. You've got your big boys in the front row to sort out the scrum. You've got two really strong jumpers in the line out to try and mess up the English line out. I think they're going to be aiming for a bit of a set-piece counter with a couple of these players. I think they're both really, really good choices. In the back row, Peter O'Mahony, Josh van der Flier and Keelan Doris. Van der Flier and Keelan Doris both playing really well, actually, in the last round. Again, very hard with the 30-man to judge just quite how well they were doing. But Keelan Doris and Van der Flier both getting their hands on the ball an awful lot in that game. Really making some good meters, trying to get over that try line. The only thing was maybe Van der Flier gave away a couple of penalties. I think there was something like 4 penalties against Van der Flier in the end, which is a bit of negative. You know, I guess when it's against Italy, especially a 13-man Italy team, you can get away with that a bit. It doesn't necessarily turn back into points against you. But against an England team, you know, who are on the up and up, they are getting their wins against their top-tier team, even though it's not necessarily the most gelled England team and it's a bit of a lesser capped England team, they're still getting these wins over top-tier nations. You can't be really giving them the 3 points. Marcus Smith's boots, normally pretty reliable, so you can't really be giving away those penalties, so it'll be interesting to see how their discipline will change going into this game. In the halfback partnership then, we have Gibson Park and Johnny Sexton back in the team. Now, we didn't get to see Johnny Sexton for a great deal of that Italy game. They tried to warm him back up into that, but Sexton will be taken back over now in that fly half shirt, as well as taking over the captaincy. So, you know, people coming back from injuries, making them strong again, I don't think that's a bad move at all. I think get them in there and put out the best team you can, especially against England. Playing at home, you know, as well as in Twickenham. We saw it last week, Wales, England at Twickenham. Was a really interesting game, so they know they're going to bring the fire. We know they're going to have the crowd behind them making a lot of noise. You know, it can really get impact. So having strong leaders on the pitch, I don't think is a bad move at all. In terms of the centre partnership, Bundee Aki going in on that 12 shirt and Gary Ringrose in the outside centre. Now, I did think Henshaw had an alright game, actually. I was wondering whether or not they'd try and slide him back into one of these positions, but they've gone for the old reliable setup. Bundee Aki for that crash ball dummy runner, and then Gary Ringrose, the much more technical player who will find the gaps. It always works well. We know enough about that partnership now. We don't really need to go too in-depth with that one. So on to the back three, where we've had a couple of a switch rounds here. Now, James Lowe going to go back in on that left wing. Andrew Conway is taking over on the right wing, and Hugo Keenan coming into that fullback shirt. So no Hansen this week, who I felt got very underutilised last week. It was very weird to watch. I thought it was a strange call to take the Italian right winger off. I know he's probably lesser experienced than someone like Ioane. Maybe you want to keep Ioane on, but I did think it was strange to take James Lowe's defender off in that game, given the fact that James Lowe then just ran over for 3 tries. I imagine maybe the same thing would have happened on the other wing, but I thought James Lowe was given way too much free roam to just start carving apart that Italian team on that left wing. But no wonder that's why he's retained his left wing shirt this week. Shame for Hansen not to be in. I'm not sure if there's an injury there. I'm not sure if there's something else going on there. Maybe they're just giving other people a turn. So Andrew Conway a bit more experienced maybe than Hansen, and we didn't get to see a lot of Hansen last week. But then also no Mike Lowry, who again I thought had a really good game last week. That could also be an injury. I haven't really kept up with the Irish squad, unfortunately, about team news or so on, about injuries. I try and do my best just to passively get news. So Keenan coming back in, you know, is perfectly sound as a fullback. Can also move to the wing if you need him to. So not really any particular downside. It's just interesting to see that the players that are playing well and in good form, not being given the chance to play some of the bigger games like England at home and get that experience in. They've instead opted for Conway and Keenan, but a bit more of a safe, reliable pairing, I imagine. As we saw, we move towards half-time. We need to, of course, talk about the Irish replacement. Starting off in the front row then, we have Rob Herring coming in, Dave Kilcoyne and Findlay Beelum. This Irish pack is actually quite large in terms of their front rows, actually. I mean, even this replacement front row looks like it has a good amount of weight behind it. You know, Rob Herring is also a very good player in terms of just running with the ball in hand. I don't think this is a bad setup, actually. They're really going to try and put pressure, I think, on that English scrum and try and see if they can maybe try and dominate that scrum a little bit. That's where you want to win penalties. That's where you want to put England on the back foot. If England can't win scrums, you take out a massive weapon in their arsenal. I think it's a really good move. Rest of the replacement forwards, Ian Henderson on the bench. Astonishing that Ian Henderson, a top-tier player of like some of the top calibre, cannot get in the starting team in this Ireland team. That's how good the Ireland team is getting now, with the likes of Tyke Byrne and James Ryan in that lock department. It's such a shame we don't get to see more Ian Henderson. I'm sure he will come on in that second half to do a bit of damage in the breakdown zone. And then in that 20 shirt we have Jack Conan who'll come on. So, you know, Keelan Doris played well last week. In all honesty, I would probably keep with Keelan Doris for this week in terms of that 8 shirt. I know people like Jack Conan, and he's a very strong player who just sort of runs forwards. But I think keeping him on for that second half may be a good move. Maybe there's a bit more gaps, a bit more players getting tired. The last thing you want to do in the 70th minute after playing a full game is then have to tackle a very fresh Jack Conan coming on the field. So I don't think that's a bad move. That'll add a bit of pressure on in that second half. Not sure we'll come on for. We may well see Jack Conan come on at 8 and Keelan Doris move to 6. we might see Peter O'Mahony retain, and maybe Keelan Doris will come straight off. Don't know if it'll be an 8 straight switch. I would imagine more Conan will move to 8 and Doris will move to 6, but we'll see how that gets on. And then the replacement backs, we have Conor Murray still getting there. I think it's a good move to not have Conor Murray starting. He's getting up there now in terms of age, in terms of caps. I don't think it's a bad move to be giving Gibson Park a good amount of game time, considering he's also playing in a relatively good form. The box kicking still could use a bit of work for me. I think Conor Murray really shows off the box kicking over Gibson Park, but all of the rest of the field, in terms of running play, in terms of the little sniping runs, the speed of the ball coming out of the ruck, to me, I think Gibson Park's doing better, so I don't think that's a bad move at all. Joey Carberry and Robbie Henshaw are going to fill out the rest of those backs, so, Carberry will be a bit of a shame to not be starting again this week, but I don't really think he had as much of an impact in terms of fly half as compared to Johnny Sexton as what we saw last week, so I don't think that's a terrible move. And then Henshaw, good coverage on that both centre positions. He'll slide into either one. And I'm not sure what happened in terms of like a wing injury. I mean, if a wing injury happens, Keenan can slide into wing. It's then about who would cover the fullback position. Maybe you'd see Carberry move to fullback and Keenan move to the wing. He's perfectly comfortable on either wing, so be interested to see how that gets on there. But it's a strong 1-23. This Ireland team that's come into the Six Nations, in all honesty, has been really good. So I think they'll get on well here. This is maybe not necessarily the strongest team, but it's certainly not far off. So they're coming into this full head of steam. They know they need the win. They're going to be putting a lot of pressure on this England team, who last week had a very similar game for me personally in terms of their game against Wales as Ireland did with Italy, where although they come away with a win, I couldn't help feel disappointed in the winning team. England versus Wales last week was such a weird game. England seemed to be all over that game for the first 40 minutes. They were getting the penalties. They were taking the 3 points at every opportunity. They were opening up the scoreboard. I thought they were winning the line-outs. I thought they were doing better in the referee's standard in terms of the scrummaging. And I thought this game is just going to slowly get further and further and further away. And England are going to be incredibly happy with a very strong result. And then in that second half, I don't know whether it was like a safety net. Maybe they thought they had so many points they could afford to switch off a bit. Maybe Wales just improved greatly. But it really began to fall apart for England in that second half. A lot more pressure put on Marcus Smith. He had a couple of kicks that didn't go quite how he wanted to. There was just general players not necessarily doing the best. They almost really lost the game. For anyone who saw the highlights of what went on with in the line-out that led to the Alex Dornbrandt try last week with a little bit of a push and shove, which completely messed up the jumper and allowed Alex Dornbrandt to get over for the try. If that doesn't count, they lose that game, and I think astonishingly against the odds there, they would have actually lost that game. So I don't think England would actually be too happy with that game last week. So again, similar to this one, they're coming in desperately needing a win against this Ireland team in order to stand the chance of winning the Six Nations. But I think they've got a lot to work on as well coming into this. So like I said earlier on, a bit of a lesser cap team, so they need to just synergise with it, just get it down. So, talking about the team that's been announced, Ellis Genge, Jamie George coming in that hooker position, and Kyle Sinclair. Now, I can't remember if there was an injury last week. To me, though, from what we've seen so far, Jamie George has been playing better in that hooker position. I don't think that's a bad move. This is was this even like the World Cup starting front row? Maybe Marlowe was starting. I can't remember who played in the World Cup final. But Ellis Genge, Jamie George, Kyle Sinclair certainly seems like one of the top tiers for England at the minute. I think that's a very good move. I think it's probably a decent counter to the Irish front row as well. So I think there's probably some good picks there. In terms of the lock department, Maro Itoje goes in that 4 shirt and Charlie Ewells will be in that 5 shirt. So Itoje has moved around a couple of areas now. I think he's actually had a good Six Nations. I don't think that's a bad move. And then the back 3 is going to be Courtney Laws retaining captaincy. Important call there. Tom Curry at 7 and Sam Simmons comes on at 8 over Dornbrandt, who, again, thought he had a good game last week. I thought that was a big call. But one of the big things for me here is going to be in terms of the lineouts. Now, to me, Ireland have one of the best lineouts in international rugby, and of course England will also know that too, but England also love having the lineout platform in order to launch set play, so they know they need to be winning this, and I think this is a really nice setup to have Itoje, Ewells and Courtney Laws all in that lineout situation. Gives them 3 strong jumpers. This is clearly designed to try and get involved with that Irish lineout to try and disrupt it a bit. I think that's really good, or just to defend your own ball is going to be more the thing. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see a great deal of turnovers on either side in terms of the lineouts. But for me, this is a setup completely designed for England to retain their own lineouts to launch those attacks from, which is what Ireland will be wanting to shut down. Tom Curry we didn't get to see a lot from last week. He came off very early on. Don't know if that was an injury or just a tactical decision. I felt like Tom Curry really didn't get a lot of game time. So he'll be hoping to stay on the field a little bit longer this week. And then Sam Simmons, maybe better just to have, you know, he's a bit more explosive, just tends to get around the park a little bit. And then to bring Dornbrand on later, maybe when players are tired. It's a big call. I think Alex Dornbrand's playing well, to be honest. I think I might have actually stuck with Dornbrand here and put Sam Simmons on in that second half. He tends to be faster, and I think when you've got room opening up, you probably want the faster players rather than necessarily the players that are breaking the lines. But, you know, I'm not Eddie Jones, so I can't make that call. In terms of the replacement backs, Harry Randall coming in here now with Marcus Smith, the youthful duo in their halfback partnerships. Be nice to see Harry Randall get a bit more game time. Marcus Smith, the golden poster boy for the BBC at this point now. He's in everyone's team of the week because he's all anyone talks about in the commentary. But he's playing well, you know. It's hard to try and take it away from him. So I'm sure I'll be looking for this game. Again, I think similar to last week, they'll be needing to take every 3-point advantage they can get in this game. Ireland will certainly be taking the threes. They'll be trying to limit what England can do in terms of attack. So I think that's a really good move. In the centre partnership, we're mixing it up yet again. We've got Henry Slade moving back to the inside centre, and Joe Marchant now comes on that outside centre. Now, this is a combo I actually don't really like. I don't think it works very well. I think Henry Slade works way better in the outside centre, and Joe Marchant to me feels a little bit more lost. I always feel like Joe Marchant, when he gets his ball in his hands in that 13 shirt, just seems to run at players, and I really think it could be something for England to look at here, to have Joe Marchant move to 12 and have Henry Slade move to the outside centre. Henry Slade is so much better in the outside centre. We saw it. Some of the kicks that he does when he has that bit more time by playing 13. I reckon it's just a lack of confidence in Joe Marchant as a distributor in order to get the ball out, which is why Henry Slade keeps filling in that 12 shirt. But I would much rather see him there. I think there's the potential there for a BUNDEE or Gary Ringrose to really get involved a little bit with that Joe Marchant 13 position. But we'll have to see how that gets on. And then in the back three, we have Jack Nowell going back on that left wing, still recovering from all those HIAs, but he's still doing okay. Max Malin's on the right wing, and finally Freddie Stewart in that full-back position. All three been a little bit quiet, so we'll hopefully be able to see this game open up. England this year have been very based around their forwards doing a lot of the work, so it'll be a lot more fun to actually see these lads hopefully get a bit more involved in some of the game, a little bit more. Freddie Stewart's just sort of sitting in that back field. We're seeing a couple of players not necessarily getting involved. I would like to see a bit more from them personally. And then in terms of the replacements, Jimmy Blumeyer, Joe Marler and Will Stewart in their replacement front three. It's a strong front three replacement. In the 19 shirt, Launchbury coming in. So that'll be a nice replacement at some point in that lock department. And then Dawn Randall, we've already mentioned, in the 20 shirt. Ben Youngs, George Ford and Elliot Daly. I don't think this is a bad move at all. George Ford has been getting a bit of a stick this year for some of his decision making when he's been coming on the field. I don't think he's done necessarily terribly anything wrong. But I think one of the big calls here, putting Elliot Daly on the bench, I think is a really good move. In terms of just covering the fullback and wingers, what it also means is that in those last minutes, if this game ends up being close and you need that 3 points and you get a penalty in that halfway line, bang, you chuck on Elliot Daly. You take the Australian move that they do with Reece Hodge, where they bring on the long range kicker right at the end of the game to steal the game. So I don't think that's a bad move at all. I think it can work well. It's a strong England team, but it's a very similar team. Oh, well, there's a couple of similar players there from what we saw against Wales, and that game went a little bit awry towards that second half. So in terms of a score prediction, what do we think, guys? Where do we think this one is going? For me personally, I'm going to lean towards Ireland for this one still. I don't know if we'll be necessarily seeing a bunch of tries opening up in this game, but I certainly think this will be a very forward-based game. I'm going to lean towards Ireland, and I'm going to say Ireland to win by... I'm going to say 8. I'm going to say 8 to Ireland. I think it might actually end up being closer than that, but hey, I've said it now. That's the joy of these preview videos. I have to just go on what I said, and you guys have to pick your fantasy choices around what I say. That's how it all works, isn't it? So yeah, I'm going to go for Ireland up by 8. I think there'll probably be a couple of tries in the game, but I think these teams counter each other so well in so many different areas. it'll be interesting to see how they get on in terms of the actual game. But of course, guys, we will be doing one of all of these videos that are going on next week for the Six Nations. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel just to keep up to date with when those videos come out. And of course, I am but one man on the internet, so make sure you guys do put down in the comment section your thoughts on the game, what you think the final score is going to be, who you think is going to do well, who you think is going to do badly, who are you supporting, are you even looking forward to this game? Are we all hoping it gets back to a 13-man, no scrummaging rubbish game? I certainly hope not. But I hope you all enjoyed today, guys. We do have all the videos out for the rest of the preview videos for this weekend, so make sure you do check out those videos as well. I will see you all next time, guys. Bye-bye.